Today we're going to be looking at your first program on the VEX test bench. So the very first thing you're going to want to do, once you're in Robot C, make sure you're not in graphical, which we can see that we're not because we have all these options over here and there's no blocks in the corner. First thing you're going to do is close out of the start page, get a blank screen. Now you're going to go to New File. You're going to create a new file, then click on File, Save As, and you're going to type in the program of your name. This one is going to be Blinking Light. Make sure to click on Documents and save it inside of your documents. Alright, now we have a blank program page with nothing on it. You're going to want to make sure that you have your program up and running and a clear screen. Make sure you're not programming on top of something else. Alright, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to program our outputs and inputs. In this case we have all outputs, and to do that you're going to go to motor and sensor setup. But before we do motor and sensor setup, we want to make sure that the computer knows what type of robot we're communicating with. So we're going to go to Robot, and we're going to go down to Platform Type, and you're going to make sure that where it says VEX Robotics, that it says VEX 2.0 Cortex. You're going to make sure that you have VEX 2.0 Cortex clicked on here, and you're going to make sure that you click on Natural Language PLTW. That tells the computer what type of robot you're communicating with, and it also tells it what language you're using. We're using Natural Language PLTW. Alright, once you've done that, you're going to go to Motor and Sensor Setup, and we've got lots of different tabs here. We've got motors, but we're not using any motors today. Analog sensors, but we're not using analog sensors today. And we have the VEX Cortex digital sensors. So these are inputs and outputs that are digital. That means that they can go on or off. And those are the only two options. Alright, so first off we're going to have a green light. Spell green correctly. Alright, this names the port. It makes it where you can know what it is named and use that in your program instead of typing in DGTL1 and a bunch of other stuff. You can just type in green and the program will know that you're talking about this LED. Sensor type, well, it's a VEX LED. Then you're going to have another light. It's either going to be red or yellow. It really doesn't matter. We're going to name this one red. VEX LED. You're going to click Apply and OK. And you can see up at the top of your program, you have your first part of your program. So Pragma config means, hey, we're configuring our VEX Cortex. It says that it's a sensor. That just means it's on one of the ports. It's a digital port 11, which should work just fine. Oh, sorry, digital port 1. That's something you have to watch out for. I almost made the mistake. It's DGTL, and then this is the number 1, DGTL, the number 2. So that can get confusing. Digital 1, digital 2, they're green and red, and this just tells the robot a little bit more about it. All right, task main. That's the main part of our program. That's where we're going to input all of our code. And we're going to start off with the first bit of code that we're going to use today, and it's going to be outside of task main. We're going to use the double / and you'll see it turns green. This is how you write comments. So the first thing I'm going to write is my name. So I know that this program is mine. Come under that. I'll type in the date, whatever your date is. We'll say it's, you know, what's today's date? 2-27-19. All right. Now, I know that what the program is and when it was made, and then I'm going to put a little bit of a comment in here about what the code's going to do. Turn lights on and off. That's our goal for the day. All right. So, first line of code we're going to learn today is turn. And then if you look, once I start typing it in, it actually gives me the options. Okay, so I can click turn LED off, or I could type it in, which I prefer, but we'll go with what we can. Turn LED off, then you're going to use a parenthesis. We're going to say, and you can see I could type in DGTL1, but if we look here, I could also type in red. Close my parentheses. All right, and then a semicolon. All right, that's my first line of code. But you can see the word red, it doesn't really recognize it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to hit compile right now, and that just checks my code. And what it's really done is the computer's actually looked at all of my code now, and it sees that red exists up here. So it makes it red down here, or green will show up as red too, but it makes it where it shows you that the computer understands what you typed in. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off both LEDs just in case they were on. So turn LED off red. I'm lazy. I'm going to copy and paste, turn LED off green. All right, that's the first line of code. Next thing we're going to learn is turn LED on. So turn LED. LED has to be capitalized. Capital O, lowercase n, parenthesis, parenthesis, and I'm going to turn on my green light. All right. Now if we look here, I've misspelled turn. If I click on compile, it's going to tell me that an error was generated, and you can see this red X. So when you compile, it's checking your code to see if the robot can understand it, and I can actually just respell turn. You can see it turned it blue now. Hit compile, my error has gone away. All right, so once I turn off both LEDs, all right, so once I turn off both LEDs, I need to turn on one, which we've done. But if I just do that, it's going to leave the light on forever. So the next thing we're going to want to do is wait. And we're going to close our parentheses. I'm going to put the number 2. That's for 2 seconds. Right there. All right, so this is going to wait for 2 seconds. So now we've got a fairly good amount of code here. We're going to want to comment this out. So turn off LED. We'll say red LED. Be specific. We're going to turn off green LED. Then we're going to turn on the green LED. And then we're going to wait 2 seconds. All right. So we can see our code. The comments help us understand what's going on. And we can glance through and read it in layman's terms instead of having to read through our code. All right. So I'm always lazy when it comes to my code. I like to make things simpler rather than being difficult. So I'm actually going to copy this code. I'm going to paste it in one more time. And right now, if we look at it, give myself a little bit of space here. What's happening is it turns off both LEDs just in case one's on. Then it turned on green. Then we're going to wait 2 seconds. So the green light's on. We're waiting for 2 seconds. Then the next thing, we go to the next line, turn LED off. It's going to turn off red. It's going to turn off green. That's going to happen super fast, like faster than you could ever see. And then it's going to turn on LED. Well, we don't want to turn on the green LED this time. We're going to turn on red. So now what our code does is green light's on. Then for 2 seconds, it waits that 2 seconds. Then it turns off both lights super fast. Then turns back on the red light faster than you will ever be able to see. Then it waits 2 more seconds. So now the red light's on for 2 seconds while it's waiting. If I wanted to do this twice for this code, now we could do a loop, but we're going to get into loop later. For today, we're just going to paste it back in. We've got it running twice. All right, so it'll turn on the green light, turn on the red light, turn on the green light, turn on the red light. That's enough for us to see. All right, I'm going to compile my program, and that shows me that my code is good. But if I come over here where it says fixed formatting and click this, it actually makes it where it's a little bit more legible. You can see it's tabbed everything in properly. And when you get into loops like while and if statements, that's going to come in really, really handy. All right. Had to wait for the bell. All right, so our code is ready to program. So if we look at our Vex program, our Vex robot, you'll have something like this. This is the Cortex, and then there's this orange USB cable and a battery. Ours are the smaller batteries. Now, you're going to take this orange cable, you're going to make sure it's plugged into your Vex Cortex. You're going to flip on the Vex Cortex, and you're going to plug in the battery. So make sure the battery is plugged in, turn it on, make sure that the USB cable is turned in, or plugged in to both the Vex and to the front of your computer into the USB port. Once that's done, you're going to go to compile program again. Always make sure that works. Also, it's always a good idea to do a firmware download. All right, so it'll be like, hey, you're going to download new firmware to your Vex Cortex, and you'll say, okay. This just makes sure that your Vex Cortex understands what language you're using, and it's going to be able to communicate with your computer properly. Most of the errors that we have whenever it comes to there's no error in the program, but it won't work, is because the firmware needs to be downloaded. And it takes a second, and then it'll pop up a thing that says it's been completed successfully. Now we'll download it to our robot. And you'll get a little waiting screen like this, and your program debugger will pop up. Now, when you have your Vex sitting in front of you and you click start, you should see the red LED turn on, and then it's going to take 2 seconds for each one, and then once it runs all the way through your code, it'll end up here at the bottom. The green arrow will disappear, and your program's done running, and it should be left with your red LED or whatever your second LED is. It'll be left on at the end of the program. If you click start again, it'll run through the program again, and it does this over and over and over again. Like, you can stop and start your program wherever you want so you can see it. When you look at your Cortex and your test bed, on your test bed in this area right here, you should have an LED, and you should see the LEDs flashing on and off. All right. Now that we've seen that, for some reason the program does not like being switched to something else while it's running, and it will do the not responding on you. That's okay. That's why we make sure to save often. Okay, so every time before you compile, make sure to save. All right, I'm going to close that program out, and it'll open back up. But now you should be ready to program your test bed and get your first program running.